What we have is a Harry Thomas special report. Today is July 21st, 2009. The website is located at harrythomas.info. I'm your host, Harry Thomas. What's going to be covered today is eugenics. And I talk a lot about how the elite that are pushing for the New World Order are very scientifically advanced. They're using a scientific method to enslave us. A lot of people can't equate exactly how diabolical that really is and what does that really entail. And if you take a look at all the globalists that are pushing for the New World Order, you will find that they're all eugenicists. And basically, eugenicists are a group of people who feel like it's their obligation to perform the duties of God and decide who is eligible to breed on the planet, how many people should be allowed to live on the planet, what kind of resources should they be allowed to use. And they set up organizations and foundations and introduce curriculum to promote sterilization, abortion, genetic modification, and they fund the science behind this. And the kinds of things that are studied are mind-boggling. I mean, anything to where what chemicals affect what parts of the body, to mind control on how to get human beings to respond in different ways, to manipulation. It's a scientific program. Wikipedia defines it as eugenics is the study of or belief in the possibility of improving the qualities of the human species or a human population by such means as discouraging reproduction by persons having genetic defects or presumed to have inheritable undesirable traits, or encouraging reproduction by persons presumed to have inheritable desirable traits. And them inheritable desirable traits are what the elite believe that they have. The rest of us are inferior to their superiority and are not fit to breed. They believe that there should be an 80 to 90% population decrease, and they promote these ideals through the premise that the earth is overpopulated and that we wouldn't be able to sustain life anymore. And that's why people are starving. That's why there's all kinds of disease. When the fact is, while proclaiming to be doing these studies, these scientific studies, to improve mankind and to improve the human species, the goal is the exact opposite. That's why we're seeing the increase in cancer, diabetes, autism, epilepsy, all these diseases that only affected 1 in 30, 1 in 40 a few decades ago are now affecting 1 in 3, 1 in 4 of the population. This is not by accident. This is part of the eugenics plan. It's the soft kill, so to speak, of the depopulation agenda. And a lot of people want to pretend like this doesn't exist because it's very uncomfortable to review information about a small segment of the population, a very small elite segment of the population, whom believe that they're better than the rest of the population and therefore need to control the population. And this kind of control isn't benefiting mankind. It's only benefiting the elite. And we're talking about total eradication of the middle class. That's part of the 80-90% plan, is to create just an elite class and a slave class. But not just any ordinary slave class. We're talking about a slave class that is dumbed down, uneducated, and physically inferior, to the point where the slave class would not even be able to defend themselves from enslavement, from total tyranny. As a social movement, eugenics reached its height of popularity in the early decades of the 20th century. By the end of World War II, eugenics had been largely abandoned. though current trends in genetics have raised questions amongst critical academics concerning parallels between pre-war attitudes about eugenics and current utilitarian and social Darwinistic theories. At the pre-war zenith, the movement often pursued pseudo-scientific notions of racial supremacy and purity. Now, this is where you're talking about where they believe that the blonde-haired, blue-eyed race was superior. You know, they moved the eugenicists from Germany over into this country after World War II and secretly have been continuing the program. I mean, even Henry Kissinger has declared that they need population reduction, that we need a new world order. Listen to a brief history of the eugenics movement.
Depopulation should be the highest priority of foreign policy towards the Third World. Henry Kissinger, 1974.
There's a need for a new world order. There's a need for a new world order.
Where does this mindset come from? Why do the elites kill the largest masses of people when no one is resisting them, when they've already attained total control? What ideology drives the elite psychopath? Since Plato's time, 2,400 years ago, state planners have openly proclaimed their desire to control every detail of the commoner's life. From breeding programs to mass extermination of undesirables, the dark dream has continued on for millennia. The scientific rationale for tyranny has always been attractive to elites because it creates a convenient excuse for treating their fellow man as lower than animals. Robert Thomas Malthus, famous for saying that a mass food collapse would be helpful because it would wipe out the poor. His fictional scenario would later be called a Malthusian catastrophe. Malthus is important because his ideas led to the rise of a new scientific field that would dominate the course of human history for the next 200 plus years. Charles Darwin, an admirer of the Malthusian catastrophe model, developed the theory of evolution, its chief tenet being the survival of the fittest. With the help of T.H. Huxley, known as Darwin's bulldog for his strong support of Darwin's theories were pushed into wide acceptance among key scientific circles throughout England and then the world. Darwin's cousin, Francis Galton, credited as the father of eugenics, saw an opportunity to advance mankind by taking the reins of Darwin's evolution theory and applied social principles to develop social Darwinism. The families, Darwin, Galton, Huxley, and Wedgwood, were so obsessed with their new social design theory that they pledged their families would only breed with each other. They falsely predicted that within only a few generations, they would produce supermen. The emerging pseudoscience was only codifying the practice of inbreeding, already popular within elites for millennia. The four families experiment was a disaster. Within only 2 generations of inbreeding, close to 90% of their offspring either died at birth or were seriously mentally or physically handicapped. The moneyed class of the planet, and particularly the royal families of the world, who were already obsessed with breeding and filled with a predatory disdain for the underclass, seized on the new science and began aggressively enforcing its aims worldwide. Biometrics appears to be a new science, but it was actually developed by Galton back in the 1870s as a way to track racial traits and genetic histories, and as a way to decide who would be licensed to breed. In 1904, the Cold Springs Harbor Research Facility was started in the United States by eugenicist Charles Davenport with the funding of prominent robber barons Carnegie, Rockefeller, and Harriman. In 1907, the first sterilization laws were passed in the United States. Citizens with mild deformities or low test scores on their report cards were arrested and forcibly sterilized.
Now, even though Wikipedia claims that the eugenics movement died post-World War II, we've seen nothing but the contrary as far as evidence that the eugenics movement is not only alive and well, but very, very far along in their progress. Hence the increase in diseases hence the decrease in critical thinking of the masses. Through a very scientifically developed plan, including poisoning the food and water that we drink, have they been able to accomplish these goals. And the thing is, even as outrageous as it sounds, it is documented. And this one being John Holdren, Obama's science czar, he says forced abortions and mass sterilization needed to save the planet. And we've continued to see these eugenicists, these elitists that are pushing for a new world order, again call for these extreme measures in order to save the planet. When the real science behind this shows that not only can we sustain current